We have always heard how working in a startup and MNCs are completely different. But have you ever thought about what MNC practices a startup can actually benefit from? So we are honored to have today Mr. Somashekar Hariappa, who will enlighten us about the same topic. He has finished his graduation from Mysore University, doing his bachelor's in instrumentation, and finished his master's in information technology. He has worked in a massive MNC, which is Dell, and now he is the CEO of his own company, Tech. Enerman. Sorry. Yeah. So, but before we begin, I was just going through my Instagram and I saw that there are so many people, talking about entrepreneurship, philosophy, gurus. There's a new Netflix show with around 57 episodes about Baba Ramdev. With this social media boom, uh, with this social media boom, we listen to so many people, but are very confused as to what to consider and what not. So, what are your thoughts on that? Since, yeah, no.
Okay, thank you, Dhruv, for that introduction. So, am I audible here?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay, fine. Um, First of all, good afternoon, friends, and thank you so much for taking your time off. And I know it's a Saturday afternoon, and you chose to be here in this meeting. So first of all, thank you. So now, as Dhruv was mentioning, I'll straight away pitch into the topic. And anytime during the meeting or this webinar, Dhruv, anyone can ask questions. So it's not that you cannot interrupt in between. So you're welcome to ask, stop me and ask questions. Okay, right. So now, Drew had a point on whom to listen, whom not to listen. So let me start with the story, friends. So there was this rabbit sitting. Sorry. So there was this rabbit who had a friend, which was a crow, and this crow was sitting on top of the tree all the time. Okay, and this rabbit hopping along the side. So was looking at this crow, and every time it asks, "What are you doing there? Actually, simply doing nothing. You're simply sitting there." And crow said, "Yeah, that's what actually I do." So one day the rabbit asked the crow, "Can I also sit like you, doing nothing?" For which the crow said, "Of course you can do." So the rabbit went to a nearby tree. It just cuddled itself and sat at the bottom of the tree. Within a couple of minutes, a fox which was wandering there came by. It just grabbed the rabbit, it ate it, and disappeared. My friends, what are the moral here? So to me, there are two things. On a lighter side, we used to make fun of our managers. Like, if you're at the top, you can simply sit there and do nothing. That is on the lighter side. But think about it on a serious note. So the judgment of the rabbit. So where did it float? So it just thought that simply you can sit, but it didn't know that this crow which was sitting there, it had different abilities. It could fly, in some enemy attack, it could go anywhere. So the point I'm trying to make here is you are bombarded with things around you. There are so many people giving you pep talks. But finally, I would say you are the captain of your soul. No, you need to use judgment and then decide what to do. Just by reading a WhatsApp message or an Instagram post, don't take any decision. Just use your judgment a little bit. You try to find the source, and I'm very sure with Google around, you can always dig into the source. So if you do that, probably I'd say that you can consciously take some decisions. So the point is, don't be very blind. Go ahead and investigate a little bit and then take a choice. Yeah, Drew.
Okay, wow. So, very interesting story. Even with the e-cell itself, we've had this where we put up a post about stocks, and people just said, this is not good, this is bad. Why do you put this up and things? But the point of putting that up wasn't to just tell, okay, guys, these are the stocks you have to invest in. It was to give markers on what are good stocks to invest in, not just blindly go follow it. So great
Exactly.
story. But so you have had a very interesting life. Can you tell us more about it? Was it planned or did it just happen? How exactly was that?
Okay, let me just take you people through my life. Well, again, I will not go to the starting point. So I will take it from somewhere from the college days, at the point where all of you are in. All right. So I finished my engineering in the year 1992, and that was the time where there was no internet. TV was just coming in. So you can just consider me of that old age, I would say, right? So I was out of the college in 92, and I was a rank student then. But then I had two friends, one Mr. Ashok Shetty and one is called Naveen Shetty. So they both actually were, just telling me, if you want to really make money, you should not be working for somebody else. You should be an entrepreneur. So this is where actually the seed of entrepreneurship was actually, put on to me. So right out of college, even though my parents didn't like that, so they wanted to be an employee somewhere, join some company. No, but since within the college days, I used to do this hobby projects. So one of the project I did that time was a simple water level controller. What it does is, as you all know, your overhead tank, this pump automatically switches, or this controller automatically switches the pump, and when the tank is empty, it starts the pump. When it's full, it switches off. Although that time nobody wanted automation, so I had done this hobby project, and my friend liked this so much, he said, actually, let us take this to market. So my entrepreneur journey started right in 92, 93 itself. And I worked 6 years. We formed this company called Insist Instruments. And along with Mr. Naveen Shetty, we were actually building this level controller projects. We upgraded ourselves to, measuring liquid levels. We supplied this to companies like Pepsi, wherein they wanted to control their large silos and their entire fluid system, or fluid mechanics, I would call it. So that was during the time frame of 93 to 98. So that time, my dear friends, although we had a good market, there were actually good customers, but then our friends, our classmates, we saw them really prospering in terms of, I would say they were actually building their own houses. They were really driving big cars. So what had happened then is the computer boom started, and all of our friends actually who were new to hit the keyboard, they all went to US. So myself and Naveen, we were just looking out and saying that, hey, what's happening? We are not making enough money. And we also questioned about, is the product what we have developed, is it good? Actually, why is that actually we are not making enough money? Because our focus was money then, right? So in 98, so we both decided that there is something wrong. We need to go out, explore the world, and bring in some experience. So that's when I joined a startup funded by the Cafe Day boss. The company was called Kshema Technology. So I started this, or actually, I joined this startup company, and then I went to US for a couple of years. So this particular company exposed me to the larger world. So now actually I was interacting with the global teams. So 2 to 3 years I spent in this company, and then suddenly the World Trade Center fell, and you know what happened, right? That the terrorist attacks and the entire economy actually came down. So all these startups crumbled. We didn't have projects outside. So I came back to India and joined another R&D company here called MRO Tech, wherein I was designing networking and telecom equipments. So from 93 to 2005, this was my journey, just three companies. Then at that moment, Dell Computers came to India, although they had an back office set up here as a call center, but then they came here and started their R&D center. So I was invited to that company, Dell. So a couple of years I spent my time in Dell, and later on Dell moved their entire R&D to Taiwan and China. They invited me there, but I was not ready to go there. My children were growing up then. I didn't want to take them to China. So I moved to a company called Cypress Semiconductors. Again, a multinational large company which was manufacturing touch sensors or the chipsets, touch-based ICs is what their forte was. So I was actually the global applications manager. During that time, the teams which was reporting to me was from Ukraine, from Japan, Germany, China, and US. And I took care of the automotive market. So this is where actually it was a big game changer for me in terms of how an technology is qualified to fit into your automobile. Although, no, we just that instrument panel or the AC vent, they all look so simple, but there's a lot of engineering when it comes to automotive stuff. So this is where I learned a lot on what quality means. How is that actually Germans really create that BMW, Mercedes? Why is that actually quality is the best in Japan? So these are some of the experience which really enlightened me. And that's when actually, when I was in Cypress Semiconductors, I thought maybe this is the time I come back and start my entrepreneurship journey again. So this is when I thought time to give back something to society. So we have really gone places, we have learned so many things. And probably if I share this with the people around in India, people like you who are dreamers. So I thought actually you could make a difference, right? So in 2014, I quit Cypress Semiconductors, and along with my friend, we started a company called Avisolar. So our focus was on energy sector. So we thought the next big thing is renewables in the world. So we entered the energy market, setting up solar power plants. And later, we started another division in the company. So Avisolar is the parent company. We started a company called Enerman Technologies, wherein we are now developing IoT-based monitoring solutions. As you know, these power plants are spread across the country, and all these power plants are set up in very remote areas where you don't get actually good engineers. The engineers would not stay there. It's somewhere very far off in Gujarat, Rajasthan, and interiors of Karnataka. Right? So all this system, whatever we have, what it does is, these are all actually monitoring equipments connected to the inverters, the solar panels, the transformers, switchyard. So from there, these sensors take the data, send it to the cloud, and then we do all the analytics on top of that. So that is the forte in Enerman Technologies. So that's where I am now. So kind of, switched from a startup, then went on to see some world outside India, then uh, considerable amount of time I spent on these MNCs, and now back to a company in India. So Dhruv, that's my story. Over to you.
Wow, that's very inspirational. But so MNCs are considered to be a very stable job, and startups really aren't. So, was there any inspiration? How do you take that risk, that jump from an MNC very stable to this startup again back in India?
Okay. So Dhruv, the way I always looked upon life is that you need to do certain things at a certain time period. Like for example, at your age, the age which you are in, I think if you desire to drive a BMW or a Mercedes, who are actually auto freaks I'm talking about, then I think that is the time to experience. At the age of 55, 60, if I want to drive that car, I think there's no fun in that. Okay, so that was actually my uh, the way I looked upon life. So again, coming to the age group you people are in, actually 20 to 30, so that's the time actually we have the ability to take a risk. So that is the time actually you do something which you are really passionate about, and that's exactly what we did. But honestly, we failed in that. By when we were 28, we thought actually we would have built a lot of wealth, but in my case actually it did not happen. So failure in the sense actually we didn't become millionaires, although that was my goal. And when we analyzed why it happened, we thought we lacked so many things. For example, when I developed a product and sold in the market, I felt actually I didn't do enough testing. So I deployed the product in the market. As soon as I came back, I used to get service calls, right? So
Mm.
second factor is, financial discipline. So the way actually money matters should be handled. Maybe actually we didn't handle it well. So honestly, we quit at the age of 28. But then this was actually haunting me all the time, right? So my whole goal was actually getting into the MNC, going out to the world was mainly to learn things. So at a age when I was actually 42, I thought this is the time if I want to start again, because I always considered once you are after 50, again, your risk appetite really goes slow. And no, you won't actually do such kind of things. You might actually want to relax a bit and take a retired life. So that's when I thought, even though I had a great job as an MNC, I was really loving it. I used to fly to countries everywhere. But then I thought, if I miss this window of actually 40 to 50, maybe I can never start a company again. So that's the point,
Mm.
Drew. I decided enough of job. So I didn't wait for any movement to happen. It was mainly on an age factor. I said, now is the time, go out and try, and let's see what happens.
Okay, okay. So since you have gone through startup to MNC and MNC to startup, do you think it's better to work at an MNC before you do your own startup, or do you think the other way around is better?
Okay. So I would say that, or my first suggestion is, never stick to companies for a long time. Okay. So let's consider whichever company you join, actually, you should not be there actually from more than 3 years. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. We'll just keep that thought aside. And I'll directly come to your question. What is the best way? Right out of the college, if you join an MNC, then the advantage is that you might get an actually FT package, a cool job, right? Your parents will be really happy. But I would say your learning curve actually might be restricted. What happens in an MNC, the way they work is, so for example, we were building, or actually when I was in Cypress Semiconductors, the goal was in the automotive, or actually inside the car, you have seen all the panels, the control panels. Earlier, it was all mechanical, right? So you have this knobs, mechanical buttons. So we wanted to change it to all touch based. So touch was actually popular in smartphone, but not in the automobile industry then. So for this project, there will be a team of actually 10, or actually there will be 10 different teams working on actually each section there. So one person would be just working on the front screen area, and somebody just on the back end, and somebody only on the PCB. So generally in MNC, they split your work actually really into an micro level. So what happens is, you end up doing the things which are actually a portion of the big system, and very often you don't even know what the other guy is doing. So you are instructed very clearly, you need to do this job, and actually you are done. So with this, what happens, your thinking really gets limited. So from that perspective, Drew, my suggestion is, working in a startup gives you the entire picture. Okay, so there it will not be disciplined. So today they would say that actually, okay, Drew, you work on actually on the board design part of it, and the firmware will be developed by Sandhya or Abhinanchan, and then that's the way actually it would go. But then tomorrow, next week, they might change the priorities, right? Also, they will give the entire big picture. So my suggestion, Drew, is, right out of college, it might be really good to work for a couple of years or 2 to 3 years on a startup, get the big picture. But there are some things which you miss in startup also, like a process, a very well-defined process that comes in an MNC. So if you have a chance, get an exposure on an MNC, working for another couple of years, that would probably, give you a complete picture if you're really out there to build some dream company on your own.
Okay, okay. Okay, so in an MNC development, you said that they do a lot of testing. You mentioned that. So, what are the processes that are really required during a product development? Actually, not just for an MNC, even for a startup. What really do you need to do?
Okay. So product development, when you say a product development, there is a definite phase right from the requirement definition till the release. Of course, it would vary. I would now consider product means even a software, I will consider it a product. Okay. Even if you're developing an app, to me, even that is a product. The product might be a complete hardware system or it might be software. So to me, it's one and the same. I would say this process is one and the same. So normally it starts with the requirement definition phase. Okay. You define what a product should be, you collect all the requirements, right, and really brainstorm on the users, who are the users of this product. So when you say requirement, it is not just collecting, okay, this product, these are the inputs and this is the output and that's what it is, but you should also think about the users. A classic example is, say suppose actually the task for you is to design a toy car, and I would say the age group for this toy car is between 5 and 10. Or sometimes a toy, it has to be designed for an age group of 2 to 5. So what happens if it is for age group of 2 to 5, then there is very likely chances that these kids might pick up this toy. They might actually try to chew it or actually bite it, which means now you need to consider the inputs that this should not be poisonous, or this should not be damaging or actually hurting the kid, right? But the same toy, if you're designing for a age group of 8 to 12, then the requirements will be different, correct? So requirement is not just the function, you should also consider the users of it. So a considerable amount of time has to be spent on looking at the user requirements and documenting it very well. So that is the first phase. And if it is actually an high-tech product, then what people do is they do something called a proof of concept. You also call it as actually POC, right? So this is basically some of the things we put it as a requirement, but we don't know how well it's going to work. What are the real problems? So in these cases, people do a proof of concept and try to test it. This is again just a functionality test. And once the proof of concept is done, then the team says that, okay, the feasibility of this product to implement it to a larger market, it is ready. So once that is done, usually in companies, they get into the planning phase of it. When I say planning phase, so that is when people really plan how many people are required. So planning in terms of resource, in terms of budget, in terms of date, the release date, and also most important actually is testing, planning for testing. In my experience, so in Dell, I was the engineering manager to release a server. Okay, it's an advanced PC. When I say server, I'm very sure all of you know about it, right? So when we were developing a server, so we had 2 months time to define the requirements, then another 2 months just for planning. End of the planning phase, we had to commit a date to the management saying that in next 4 months this product is to be released, and each team, when it's a server, there will be the mechanical team, there will be the electronics team, there will be a team which is working on power supplies. There were 50 different teams working on this entire server, and everybody had to give their plan, because once the planning is approved, then came the implementation phase, and no discussions on dates at all during implementation phase. The date has been decided because the marketing team is gearing up their materials and they're announcing to the entire world that on this date Dell is implementing the next generation server. Right? That's the way it actually worked. So testing phase. So after the planning, implementation, and testing. So this I feel actually is a very big phase wherein most of us in India, we kind of actually miss this actually part of it. So we kind of tested really an overall, and actually we used to release to the market. Right? That's my experience working in Indian companies. But that they were actually very rigorous. They make the testing so stringent. You have to make it fail. And again, see, testing is not just functionality testing, but testings like, I'll just again give an example, a vibration test. Okay, because the products are shipped. Now you design the board, you have assembled the system, and it is now ready to ship. You package it and ship it. When it reaches the customer, it doesn't work. So how can you avoid such scenarios? So that's when they do something called a vibration test. And there are also tests like EMI EMC test. I don't know if you're an electronic student, then you might have this. EMI or EMC is electromagnetic compatibility. So as you know, these products, as soon as it is powered on, they've got the tendency to release these radiations. So there are these norms which will actually tell you that your radiation limit cannot exceed this much. It has to be below a certain level. So based on that, you get these marks. You would have seen in the product there would be something called an CE mark, right? So that is actually some products, if it has to go to Europe, then the CE mark is a must, which means it has been tested for that standard. Similarly, if a product has to be sold in US, that's called FCC mark. So this I'm talking from a product's perspective, a hardware. Similarly, for software also, there are actually a lot of stringent IEC requirements, we call it as. If you adhere to that, then we say that actually it has been tested to meet these conformities, as well as actually functionality has been done. So this is the kind of phase, Drew, just to summarize: requirements, POC if needed, then planning, implementation, testing. In testing, generally 3 phases: unit testing and system testing, and then all this compliance testing, and then release to market.
Okay, wow. So I want to focus on testing. So the others are something that most people do, but testing is something that we as Indians don't really pay a lot of attention to. We tend to test the basic overall. If it works, we send it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So just before that, Dhruv, so when I'm actually talking on some subject, if you feel actually it's going, too much, so always actually you can stop me, okay?
Okay.
Because sometimes with the enthusiasm, I'll just, keep telling the stories as well. You can always cut me short. All right. So now your question is actually on testing. What is that actually we can do, right, Dhruv? So Dhruv, again, the scenario would be different for a product testing and a software testing. Okay, so I would say on testing, we need to always think about some automation if it is software testing. Well, in hardware also it is there, but in software, you need to think of automation. That is actually you write the code, and there is also another team which could actually uh, write some simulation or actually some use cases which can put in all these boundary conditions and make it fail. So coming to it, I think your specific question was actually on the testings. When I say actually in India we don't do much of testing, you are asking that what is the gaps. Is that correct, Dhruv?
Yes. Why is there such a difference?
Okay, so it could be 2 reasons. So one is we are just worried about the output. So this is, traditionally it has come to us, right? Your parents just ask you how much marks you scored. If you're 95%, they're happy, right? So we are overall worried about the end results much more than really making it fail. Say suppose actually some product doesn't work, we have the habit of actually hitting it and then suddenly it starts working, right? So this
Yeah.
is the culture actually we are coming from. If it works, that is actually good enough. So I'll just give an example of my experience with this Japanese teams. We used to do a proof of concept for the automotive market, designing a front panel for a car stereo system. And when we release the code and ship them the product, within 2 days they would say, okay, there's a problem here, there is a bug, it is not working as expected. Now the engineers in India, their immediate goal was they will go there, somehow find out how that bug came in, and they will tweak the code or do some changes. And then next day we used to reply to the Japanese team, fine sir, we have fix the issue. It is no more visible here. However, when we were in the meetings, the Japanese were never happy about that. Never happy, because we Indians, as soon as it is fixed, we feel very happy. Okay, the problem is solved now. But in their case, it is not like that. So their next question is, tell me how that problem was solved. How did you figure out actually where the bug was? So that is the mindset, especially in these countries where they're so paranoid about quality. So testing is the thing for them. They will rigorously test it. As again an example from the same customer, we designed the product and gave it to them. So they installed in an Honda car there actually the stereo system, and they were touching it. This is the touch sensor. These touch sensors are called capacitive touch, by the way. Now, they are test cases. Immediately they consider the next test case was actually somebody came with a gloves. We touched with the gloves. It was not working. Because the gloves, a mechanical switch can work, but for a capacitive coupling, a gloves has another impact here, right? So that didn't work. Second, one more use case. So somebody comes and sits inside the car. So as you know, in Japan, it's actually freezing during winter. So people have the tendency, they come up with an hot cup of coffee. So this guy comes with an hot cup of coffee, keeps the mug inside the car holder, and then presses the button. Now button is not working. That is, difference is now his finger is hot. Temperature, does it have an impact on capacitance? So do you think all these test cases we would consider if we were asked to do it? So the point is, testing means you need to think about, so if you are delivering a product, think about all possible use cases. Only then the quality is the best. So I think this is something which we didn't have in syllabus in the college, even though engineering or any testing we typically consider as what design means. Everyone wants to get into the design, right? All of you wants to get into the design. But then if I say testing, I'm very sure none of actually want to get in. But I feel that at least thinking about what all scenarios could be there actually is very important. And in India, we don't do that much. We think we really focus on the functionality part, and that is it. So my suggestion to you is, whatever you do couple of tests for yourself. It could be a simple documentation work which you're going to do, right? Or actually, setting up this meeting, and you always know the camera fails, the mic goes off. So that's also kind of testing only. Before the meeting, you do a rehearsal and you see all the equipments are fine. So I think this mindset should come in through. If all of us think that anything we do, this could be used in all these scenarios, and use that as one of the use cases, and spend some time on testing. Just the output comes, don't think, actually I got the output and that's it. So please have that mindset, bring in that mindset that actually testing is very important, and these are my users, they will use my product in this way. And if that is taken care, I think our products will be of very high quality though.
Wow, okay. So you mentioned Japanese companies do a lot of testing. That actually brings to my mind a very recent thing. This whole boycott China. How feasible do you think this entire thing is? Because now, as you mentioned, Indian products don't go through a lot of testing. Therefore, we stick to the hitting and fixing method. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. So the question is on boycotting Chinese product. Is that really feasible?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
All right. So again, this is my personal opinion. It could, you could use some pointers from this and actually frame your own opinion. That's what I would say. So my thought process. So I have visited China many times as a supplier, also as a vendor. Okay. I would say it will take time. It is not easy for two reasons. One is, or the biggest one is, cost competitiveness. You might be knowing that India is one of the biggest producers, or actually exporters of garments. So recently I was reading in Tirupur, when they are manufacturing these coats, or actually on these Venus shirts and all this branded shirt. So I was told that the buttons and that zippers, all this comes from China, it seems. So you can imagine the kind of cost competitiveness these people have brought in, right? So I'm just trying to tell you why people are using Chinese products. It's actually very easy for us to just say that, okay, let's boycott, but is that really reality? Right? So let's just check with that fact. Why actually these products are actually so cheap? So my experience visiting China, when I went to the factories, we say volume manufacturing, right? So anything manufactured in large scale, it's in volume manufacturing. So in India, when you go to a supplier and say, he asks, sir, actually, what is the quantity you have? Do you have huge volume? I say, yes, we have a huge volume. And what is the volume? He would expect some 1,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces. That is considered huge. But in China, it's not like that. So for them, and when you say there is a volume for a product, it is like 100,000 pieces, 100K, which means they have set up these facilities, the factories, to, and they also have automated it, and they can produce in mass. So in a day, if an Indian factory can produce 100 numbers and they produce 100,000 numbers, so naturally the cost of running that factory in India will be divided by on to 100 or 1,000, but they're 100K, which that is the biggest reason why the product become very cheap. Now, how is that actually we can actually do that, right? I think the infrastructure setup in India, that has to change, meaning actually maybe the government can pitch in, or actually, if we can also produce things in that huge volume for which there is a huge investment actually to be done. The factories, even to produce a simple toy, will be very, very expensive. The toy may look very simple, but there's a lot of dies to be done for that. So to cut short the story, I would say to manufacture in such kind of a volume in India, it's gonna take a long time. But what we can do is, there should be a starting point, right? I would say we should actually categorize some of the things, and there are some of the items which I feel in India we can start manufacturing, and that segment probably we can say, let us not actually touch the Chinese brand actually on that segment. A simple thing, for example, disposable plastics, or so we have actually, there is a lot of alternatives, right, for instead of plastics. So the arecanut things, which are all locally grown, the arecanut leaves I'm talking about. Maybe in the entire list of things which are getting from China, we have to segregate and say that, okay, these 5 items, let's actually do it locally, and then one by one probably we should start replacing. But the bigger items, like the cell phones or electronic items, I think manufacturing in India, it will take a very long time. Another example I would say is, we are into solar power plants, and the solar panel you would have seen, so that is okay. In fact, I'll just hang it here. So these are the solar panels I'm just talking about. This is a simple 60 watt panel. Usually it comes in a large 2 meter by 1 meter. So these panels are imported from China in huge quantities, and it is still cheaper to get it from there. So whatever said and done, when you invest 5 crore, 10 crore of rupees, and if there is a saving of actually 40 lakhs, why would the investor or the person who is setting up a solar plant in India, why would he actually buy it locally? Because it works out so cheap from China. So these are some things where I feel government interventions are needed, and policies should be in place to help buy Indian goods. So it is a teamwork through, I feel, a lot of things. But from our side, I think some of the items we can refrain from buying, which is probably made in China.
Okay. So, talking about China and Japanese, so we spoke about the difference in testing and the difference in volume. Are there any other primary differences between these development points?
Okay. So we spoke about testing and yes, of course, volumes. So there is another aspect of engineering, I would say, which is not really practiced very well in our country. That I term it as documentation. It's a simple thing, documentation. So how much of you really love documenting the work you do? So this is a very simple thing, all of us actually can implement it. In
Yeah,
India,
I don't think anyone does it.
yeah. So even in engineering, the project report and all that, it is something we hate just for the heck of it. Actually, we do it, isn't it? It's not really documenting the work actually which we did. So this document and quality are actually two related stuff. So the way we meet the quality requirements in Indian companies through, the way it works is the coding is completed, the product, everything is done, and suddenly one day they say that actually there is a quality audit for your team. We then go back and actually do those quality documents, all those paperwork, saying, for example, on coding side, the comment should be in place, the code should be understandable from to others, the syntax should be right. So we used to go back and actually and then prepare these quality documents, which means quality is just as a department, and we just meet their guidelines. However, in other countries, so this is again true even in China or Japan, wherein they document each and everything. So this really enables teamwork. See, we should not be very self-centric, I would say. So as engineers, you all, I'm very sure individually, each one of you will be amazing. Your IQs were very high. But imagine what could happen if all of you actually really come together as a team and use each other's strength. Right? When you want to do this, that is when actually this documentation is extremely important. So I strongly suggest that you get into that culture of documentation, and automatically when you do that, when you document, it can be reviewed from somebody else, the quality of your job improves. So this is the third aspect, Dhruv. I would say that actually, even though you are engineers, you need to document things very well. There's also an associated topic, I'll just talk about it later, about this patenting and trademarks, which is also very important, which in our case, we all neglected it totally. We don't care in India about this patenting and IP stuff, but outside it's a big, big deal. So the third aspect, I would say, since you asked the question as actually as relating to China and Japan, I would say focus on quality is the most important thing. It should be very rugged, very reliable, and quality should be, it should be inculcated into you. It is not a quality department which does it. Actually, your job actually, you should do a very quality oriented task.
Okay, so basically documentation or any quality thing shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be something that happens while you're creating.
Exactly right. And as you know, there are a lot of tools also through. Actually, I would suggest there's a tool called mind mapping. If you've not heard of it, I just Google that. It's called mind mapping, where simply you can just put your thoughts also. If you are someone who are really looking into capturing your ideas, that's a very nice tool. Search for actually some mind mapping tools and use it.
Okay, so since we're on the topic of quality, when you were working or in general MNCs, do they look for 100% or 98% quality in every product, or do they go with some amount of risk, like 90 or 80%, and they're like, okay, 10% we'll do it later? Is there anything like that?
So no, not really. Yes, you are talking about the what do you say? How do you quantify the quality part of it? So definitely there is no relaxation on that. Again, an example: when I was in Dell, when we release a product, when the design and development team, when they commit a date, and at that date when they say that the product is now released, there were nearly 15 to 20 factories across the world. They will start manufacturing it in a very large scale, because the marketing people also would have done that. So that is when they say one small error in your development thing and in your in your design, what would happen that day? If they had produced 10,000s of the pieces, everything has to be scrapped. So they would not take a chance on quality at all through. So this is how actually it works outside. So there is nothing like 97% or 98%. It should be 100%. And of course, when they do the design so rigorously that every piece will be thoroughly tested, And finally, when it is going out of the factory on a sampling basis, they will test it from an assembly line. Each one of them, they take it to a sampling line. But
Hmm.
overall, there is no relaxation on 98% or 97%. It should meet 100%. And of course, when it comes to software, you always have an luxury of having some defects or bugs. That is the reason, as you know,
Correct.
there's
Yeah.
iOS updates or actually Android updates keep coming, because there is nothing actually. If something fails, it is on the air through the wireless. You can update it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So, when you were working in the MNC, so there's something called as entrepreneurial. That's basically startup like entrepreneurs within an MNC. Was that available? How do you exactly inculcate that culture? Like, let's say you go and you start working in MNC, you still want to do something. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Say it again, Dhruv. Let me try to understand your point exactly.
Okay,
You
so
repeat that again. Yeah.
yeah, so there's an entrepreneur who starts a startup outside, but there are also entrepreneurs who create new ideas and like basically form a startup within an MNC. So, what are your thoughts on that? Would that be a better approach, or would exiting from the MNC and doing the startup a better approach?
Okay. So here, I would say this is an individualistic approach we need to take. Meaning, why is that you want to form a company of its own? What is your goal? So normally there are two reasons why people would want to start a company. So for one is, many people they think, I want to be my own boss, meaning I don't want to take instructions from anybody, right? I want to do my own job, and I have got great ideas. That is the reason actually I want to be an entrepreneur. Because of that reason, startup. Second, there are people who again feel that from an 8 to 6 job, how much salary can I get? There's always a limitation, right? How much of wealth you can create. So there is a second set of people who want to really create wealth from their startup. Maybe the third set of people are the ones who really want to pursue their passion. So they want to actually do something which they feel actually they are very good at, and so they want to excel at that. Right? So if the people actually fall into the third category, then being in a company, maybe in an MNC, and then pursuing this might be a good idea. Because startup, if you're coming outside the MNC, you have your own set of challenges. You pay your office rent, you pay your employees, but being inside a company, and you run a different business unit where you take all the responsibility, at least the financial burden, and running the organization. So this headache won't be there. You focus on the passion, your work, and actually you can be still an entrepreneur within the company. Through that's what I feel.
Okay, okay. So now let's say some of these students don't really want to do a startup. Are there any sort of qualities that a student should obtain to excel in a corporate world?
Okay. Number one thing is, what you guys are doing now. Communication, there is no substitute for that, right? Means you need to showcase yourself to excel in a corporate world I'm talking about. One thing is, as engineers, we will be good at the job, but then this has to be showcased very nicely to your managers or your team members. So it's not enough just if you're very good at coding and actually simply do that. So I would strongly suggest that you improve your communication skills. Communication, both, not just actually your oral communication, but also documenting things, sending the reports, and that should be something really impressive. Also, people in any corporation, they like the freshers to take a lot of initiatives. The way I see it, we have hired, or actually throughout my career, I have hired a lot of people. There are again two sets of people I see. One set who are extremely brilliant. We hire from IITs also. Theoretically, when I ask any question, there's absolutely, is 200% they are perfect in all the things. They have to join the companies, and in the company we give them a simple task of actually rigging up a circuit to blink an LED. Actually, they couldn't do. I'm talking about theoretical and practical aspect. So what company is really looking at is actually both. Theory is not just good enough. That might be good enough just to get inside the company, but then for survival, you have to be really good at your practicals. So that's my request. Don't just read books and have those answers. You get a chance, even if a simple piece of code, you break the code, do all sorts of experiments, testings, whatever I talking about. And there's also one more session, Dhruv, is on actually taking initiatives. That is, you join the companies and don't behave like you are there to take instructions. That's how typically in the college it happens, right? You are supposed to just say yes to your professor and can't ask questions, or actually, you cannot actually raise a lot of doubts as well. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
In a corporate world, people like you asking questions. Of course, not the stupid questions, because there are also people, just for the heck of it, they ask questions. That can be easily differentiated. But if you have that curiosity, genuinely ask questions and take some initiatives there. Don't wait for your boss to give you the job. You go ahead and actually show him something which you have done on your own. So these are some characteristics beyond your competence on your tools or programming skills. If you have it, it's not just MNCs. Anywhere, you would be really appreciated if you have those skills.
Okay, okay. Um, so since we've spoken about an MNC, if you start a company, are there any sort of steps that you can take to become an MNC?
Now, what is the definition of an MNC? We just, multinational companies. That's where we kind of spell it out, right? MNC. So startup. Again, startup also, there is one thing you guys should be knowing. Sorry, slightly off the one, Dhruv, but I'll come to your point. When you say
Mhm.
startup, there are two types of startup, okay? One is a startup by these young people or somebody, or they also call it as a bootstrapped startup. That is, you put your own money and you have some idea and you try to see whether this idea can be converted into a product, and if you can make some more money out of it. That's one kind of startup, bootstrap startup. Second is, the VC funded startups. These funded startups. So that is where actually you really get a good pay as well, because these are all funded companies. Okay, so don't fall this general term of startups. If when you are joining some companies also, just find out how it is there, because if it's a bootstrapped startup, then you are at a high risk there. The work might be exciting, but the company is really might not be funded well. It is always, if you are really looking into a stable income, then there might be some challenges there. Okay, so always differentiate. Right, now coming to Drew's question of actually moving from startup to MNC. So normally startup, when it is funded by VCs, only then it can really become big. Correct?
Mhm.
There are a lot of people with wealth looking out for great ideas, and they will pump in the money to set up your company. The next part, what all of these people will be looking at is how to get back the money. That is, they invest 1 crore and they want to get
Returns.
25 crore, right? So the path from a startup is normally, they call it as, there will be shareholders. These people who put the money into the company, they become the shareholder of the company. Okay, if there are two
Mhm.
companies in putting the money and you are the one who started this company, it might be, they might take 50% of the share, another company might take 25% of the shares in your company, and you might hold some 25%. I'm just giving a scenario.
Mhm.
So now they have put this money, everyone have put this money, and actually you're running this startup, and you need to make that big buck. how do you do? Generally, the company becomes listed. So this is the term. Listing means it is being listed in NSE, NASDAQ. You'd have heard of this, right? That is, the company
Mhm.
is now going public. People can trade from outside. That is when actually you make money. So the large companies, when I say MNCs, these are usually listed companies. That is, this startup, if it is now actually doing very well, slowly you feel this is the time that you take this company to public. So usually in the startup phase, it will be a private limited company with all these shareholders. Now, when you're going public, the public can trade these stocks, and that is when the huge money comes in. And you people, since you're having somebody saying 50% and 25% stake, they can also sell their shares and make that big buck. Okay, so becomes a listed company, and once it's a listed company, then if the management is really good, your product is great, it keeps on growing, and that is when you start having your offices across different countries globally, and now you're becoming an international company. This is the path, Dhruv.
Okay, okay. So, taking a step behind, what are some important things to know when you just start the company?
Okay, a very good question. So when you start the company, what are the important things? um, Although I believed when I started the company, I always thought it was product. You have a great product, you will succeed. But now, after so many years experience, my dear friends, I would say that is not correct. Product is important, but the biggest thing when you start a company is selling. Business development, sales and marketing is the most important pillar for your company if you want to succeed. Okay, so I would sum it up actually as three items, Dhruv. Product, of course, is needed. Product, sales and marketing, and your finance. These are the three most important verticals you need to think of if you are starting a company on its own. When I say finance, it's not just the money which is coming in, it is the financial discipline, which means so you need to know and understand where this money is going out. Isn't your product making profits, or you are just losing month on month? So financial is very, very important. Being engineers, so we like the numbers, but then we are not that methodological, right? So I
Mhm.
feel these three aspects, you should have a great product. But if your sales and marketing teams are great, see, sales and marketing, as you know, they can sell the product even if it is not created. I have seen such kind of actually sales guys. So that is very important. Else you have a great product, if you can't market it, however great the product is, it's of no use. So if any one of you are starting your company, ensure that one of your team member should be, I mean, never ever actually lose your eyes on business development and sales. We tend to put all our money in product development, and that's where actually we get doomed. Selling should happen even as the product is actually getting developed.
Okay, okay, very interesting. So this is going to be my last question since it's already been an hour.
Yeah.
This is something that's going to happen very soon. Is it better? Would we be expecting a big package of money at the end of engineering? Or is it better take a small and then grow to a big package in, like, let's say, a company?
Okay. So money will come to you at one point in time. So the direct answer to this question is right out of the college, first 5 years. So that is my suggestion. 3 to 5 years, you should not look into money. You should look into the kind of work you are doing. This is my sincere request, because that is the time when you build the foundation. I'm very sure 4 years in PS or actually any other engineering colleges, you would have really learned that skill, but then you need to now implement it, and you should also look into the practical aspect. In my experience, I feel in the college what we learn is more of a theoretical world. So next 2 to 3 years, you need to focus on your knowledge expansion, because first 5 years if you spend on this, through later on, and when you grow, this will be a solid foundation. So be careful in choosing the company you join. In one of my company's experience, for us the mandate was only to hire from IITs. Okay, so we used to visit all these IITs and hire people, give them a very hefty package. The problem Dhruv was, we used to hire them, bring in here, what they were doing. We used to put them as an L1 support. When I say L1 support, this is a semiconductor company, so there is a support team. So these people have to edit the data sheet, and if there are customer issues, they are logging into the issues. I used to feel really bad about it, because people who have done, and we know in India going into IITs is a big deal, and these are supposed to be the best brains. They come and spend here 2 to 3 years just editing the data sheets and learning nothing. So just be careful. But they got an hefty package. After 3 4 years, they get married, and so it's a different line altogether, I would say. My
Okay.
strong suggestion: don't look into the package. At the same time, yes, you can actually, I'm not saying that you have to work for free and just stop. I'm not saying that at all. But let that not be the top criteria for choosing a job. If there are 3 jobs for you, just ask the question. Even to the interviewers, you ask them which team I will be in. If you're joining a big company, ask them which team I have been. Another case, one of my cousin's case, wherein he joined again a large multinational. Don't want to tell the name. Electrical engineer. He was actually brilliant. The company was doing a lot of electrical stuff, but he was put in a tender department. When you say tender department, what they do, they look into the requirements and make all the materials needed for that project. So sometimes
Okay.
it all ruins the career. So just be focused, ask them questions, and ask them what exactly you'll be working on, and make your choice based on that.
Wow. Okay. That was so informative. We have one question from the audience okay, we have questions coming in, so we'll just cover
Okay,
them.
good. Yeah, okay, sure,
So
sure.
from Abhignan, we have Japanese have a very acute taste for quality, but doesn't the quality also depend on the customer who will use the product? If a product is launched in India and the same product is launched in the US, will the company put effort in maintaining the same quality levels for both versions?
Okay. Maybe what Abhinanjan is saying is, till now that was the case, wherein people targeted the users and they set the quality. I'll just go back to that example of the solar panel which I showed, Abhi. What happened was, in China, if you go to the factories, they have got 2 or 3 quality varieties. Again, they didn't do it on purpose. In any manufacturing line, when it is mass produced, obviously there will be some items which are just perfect in all ways. So as you know, see, we buy all these shirts of these branded shirts, right? And we buy it in seconds. What will happen? One of the button wouldn't have been stitched properly, or actually, the line has not come straight, right? So these are kind of seconds thing. So similarly, this culture is there in all the countries. They have two separate things. So now that customers, like in India, where we don't mind that even if there is a small flaw, actually we'll go for it. So we end up buying those things. Because of that, people use that to their advantage and try to ship it, because in US they won't tolerate. They actually go for perfection. So the best of the thing went to US. Whichever is not good, had some flaws, actually came to India. That was actually the thing of the past. But going it, if we all decide that no, we are also conscious about quality, I don't think those companies can survive that. So the point is, we should not compromise on whatever we are buying. If there is some rejection, if we also start rejecting it, then obviously they cannot ship it to us. But given the population in our country, maybe it will take long time, but eventually when you guys are all becoming old, this would be the case. One quality across the world, across all countries.
Okay, so I think this is also related to what you mentioned. You had spoken to me about 3 levels of manufacturing in China: A, B, C, and could you talk about that a little bit? I think it would interest them.
Okay. So this is applicable for any product. Meaning, let me take an example of a semiconductor or a chip design. Okay, the IC is what we buy. The silicon wafers they use. So as you all know, when they manufacturing these integrated chips, the raw material for this is silicon wafers. So these ones, this is like, chopping off, I would say, let's take just to give an analogy, right? So chopping off, you buy a cucumber and actually you want to make an salad. So then what will happen actually, the middle portion of the cucumber, I think actually you could have the right size, the right shape, and the taste also will be consistent, but the top two ends may not be okay, right? So similarly, silicon also we have an analogy wherein some part of the wafer it will be perfect, so they can really be used for they will be highly reliable. So in the manufacturing facilities, they will isolate it and keep it separately. Although the functionality of these silicon wafers are same, but because they have been extracted from a portion which is not the best, functionally you won't actually see any difference. Okay, so if somebody is buying that and actually they send you some samples for testing, it will all work fine. But in our case, the solar power, the panel, it has to work for 10 long years. Okay, the ones which are of low quality, they will all work for probably 1 or 2 years and then they conk off, but the other ones will go on. So these kind of differentials are made in an electronic product, and because of that, these different quality tires exist through. I don't know actually whether
Okay.
I put the point properly, but whether that is what actually you really wanted to know.
Yeah, so basically, whenever we get a product that's made in China, we always say, "Oh, this will stop working in 3 months."
Right.
But that same product, when it's in the US, it lasts for a long time.
Correct.
So
Yes.
what I think what you said was that there are different levels of manufacturing also.
Correct. Yeah.
For countries like India, they give it from they
Yes.
manufacture it in a low level.
Yeah. So again, I won't say that actually. It will be manufactured from the same facility through, but then these are all actually rejected pieces, which is not meeting the quality check requirements of US, that are kept separately and then shipped to us. So they don't have a separate factory to manufacture low quality stuff. It is coming from the same product line. But
Okay.
these are reject pieces. Like the dosas you make in all dosas will not be consistent. The ones which goes to
Right.
the dogs. Right.
Okay. Okay. So to fix that, it's all of us demanding that quality.
Yeah,
Not
maybe
just
eventually, so
not
that they just reject those things. Actually, they should not be selling that.
correct. Not just in us buying, but also us developing. When we develop something, it's very important that we stick to that.
Well said, Dhruv.
Okay,
Correct.
so a question from Utkarsh is, how can bootstrap startups draw inspiration from MNCs and conduct their market research efficiently?
Yes, market research. See, in MNCs, what happens is, for every activity, there are people. The reason being, since they have money, maybe. An example, in Cypress Semiconductors, when we are selling a product, we had a so-called pricing team. We had a team called forecasting, who will tell that no, this is the kind of forecast which is coming in. Market research is separate team, so they can afford to do all those things. But in a startup, as you all know, you have a limited uh, finance or actual funding which is coming up. So the BD team, or actually business development team, or a sales guy who is hired, he will only do all those kind of things. So I would say, to this question of actually Utkarsh, the inspiration what we need to take from MNs is, these functions are very important. Right? As I told you, market research, before you say that actually my product will be liked by everyone, it's better you do a market research and find out about your competitors. Who are all the competition? And when I say competition, not just on the different parameters, right? One is actually functionality. Who are all meeting your requirements or matching your functions? Whose functions are greater than yours? Whose price is high? Why is that actually some of them are the prices are high, still actually they are able to penetrate to the market. You need to do all this research. So the inspiration we need to draw from MNs is that all these functions are needed. But then, can you put so many people in your startup? It might not be possible. So one person, or actually, you need to assign all these tasks to one person. So the functionalities borrow from MNCs, but here it might be one person doing all these functions of a multinational.
Okay, so I think that's it from the audience. Since anyway they've submitted their questions beforehand, and that is what I asked.
Right.
But thank you so much for this session. I think it was so informative, and not just informative; it was a little bit inspirational. I personally, we had this conversation a while ago,
Yeah.
and my mode of thinking has changed, and I hope that everyone here has changed as well.
Yeah.
Testing quality, it's very, very important. And those are the things that an MNC does that a startup doesn't do, especially in India. So I think, and I'm sure the rest of the entrepreneurship cell thinks that this was very, very inspirational. And thank you so much for joining us. We are all very grateful. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of thank yous in the chat now.
Yeah, thanks, Dhruv.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Yeah, and all the best. I'm very sure all of you one day would really become a great entrepreneurs. I'm definite about that. So all the best. Follow your dreams, guys and girls. And Dhruv, you can share my email ID also if anybody wants to be in touch with me. Definitely, I would love to give them any information they need. Okay, you can share it in the group later. So thank you very much. All the best, guys. And thank you for spending your time today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.